Hey, it's Maximo and welcome to Maximo's Travels. It's day 5 in Taipei and today we're travelling to Beitou on the outskirts of Taipei City. It'll take us over an hour to get there and we'll be riding on 2 trains. One, a very colourful and funky local train. At Beitou, we'll check out a historic train station built during the Japanese colonial period. Walk through utterly delightful parks, marvel at architecture, both indoors and out. We'll check out an Edwardian building built by the Japanese in Taiwan, the Hot Springs Museum. We'll check out the thermal valley and wonder at the misty-covered thermal lake. Joe and I will split up and I'll take a train back to the city, where I'll see not one but 2 of the most magnificent temple complexes you're ever likely to see. And we'll finish off a perfect day's touring by having sushi at Kura Sushi Train Restaurant. Join me. It was day 5 in Taipei and we set off relatively early to try and beat the heat and humidity. Our destination was the thermal valley in the Beitou District. This is 2 trains away on Taiwan's very efficient MRT underground rail system. The rail system in Taipei is fast, efficient, extensive and very cheap. It only cost a couple of Australian dollars per ride. It was a Sunday morning and while the trains weren't busy, we did expect the thermal valley and its other attractions to be quite busy. The thermal valley was 15 kilometres north of our hotel and about an hour by train. We decided to make a day trip of this because there was a number of really interesting things to see. There's the very famous thermal valley. There is the Xinbeitou historic station, the Beitou Hot Spring Museum, and a very interesting architectural delight, that is the public library, as well as a delightful park in the area. We rode the MRT to Beitou station and then changed for the small, delightful Xinbeitou line. This was a single track line with a train with only a few carriages, and it had delightful decorations both inside the train as well as outside. This line is only a couple of kilometres long and only has 3 stations. And the Xinbeitou station is just as quirky as the train. I mean, what's with these climbing babies on the rock? I don't get it. Modern art. The first thing that we visited was the Xinbeitou historic station. This is just to the left of the new modern Xinbeitou station. It's open from 10 AM to 6 PM. We got there about 15 minutes before it opened and had to wait around a bit. Thank goodness it was overcast, slightly cooler, but a little bit drizzly. Entry to the station and the small museum within the station building is free. The station is very well preserved. It was built by the Japanese in around 1916 and it's the last remaining station of the old Tensui line. And they've even preserved one of the old carriages from the old line here as well. The main old station building was a historic wooden building. It looked fantastic. Inside was a small museum with plenty of original artifacts and details about the history of the Japanese occupation of Taiwan, as well as the building of the railway line. We spent about 20 minutes at the museum and then walked the short way to Beitou Park, with its stunning fauna and flora, as well as key architectural elements. It was a stunningly tranquil, beautiful park, and the wetness just gave it a really nice vibe and atmosphere. Along the way we passed the very famous public library, Beitou Branch. This is made almost entirely of wood and is very eco-friendly. It's one of Taipei's most famous and recognisable pieces of architecture. It's also a fairly infamous Instagram spot. Beitou Hot Spring Museum. It's been quite overcast and raining, but strangely enough it's been drizzling for a while and I don't feel wet. It sort of evaporates off you as soon as it lands. So we're at the museum, free entry. Let's go in and have a look. You've got to take off your shoes and you put them in the locker. All very efficient. The Beitou Hot Spring Museum is housed in a public hot spring bath that was built during the Japanese colonial era. It's a Tudor-style building built in brick and wood with a lovely black tile roof. It's set in very picturesque gardens of Beitou Park. It's so unusual that the Japanese built a public bathhouse in a Tudor or Edwardian English style. Most unusual. On our way to the thermal valley. It's a nice easy uphill walk. Is it hot, Joe? It does look green. Sitting on these marble seats, they're quite warm.
Just what you need on a nice warm day.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I wasn't sweating enough. Yeah. Let's go. Oh, you can really feel the heat coming off that lake. Oh. Oh. It's really green when the sun's out, isn't it? Well, what do you think of that, Joe?
Yeah, it was really good. Well worth a visit to come and see these hot springs.
Yeah, it's really magical when the sun's shining.
Yep.
And it's almost like a lime green fluorescent colour.
Yeah, so it's a green sulphur hot spring, which is quite unusual, as we've already mentioned in the video.
And it didn't really smell. I thought it was going to smell really sulphury.
I mean, you get a little bit of a whiff of it, don't you? But it's nothing bad at all.
But I think the main thing is the heat coming off that lake was...
the steam. I think it's a cooler day today. It's only about 25. A lot easier and not so humid. But the steam swirled around over the little ponds there.
Yeah.
Like, get a gush of steam.
And those seats were really hot, weren't they?
Oh yeah, the hot seats were,
hot.
I mean, does it ever get cool enough to sit on a hot seat here?
Probably not. But I think well worth coming. It was a nice easy stroll up there.
Yes. We'll definitely get to the second station, not the first one.
Yeah.
As we've covered already. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, well worth coming up here.
Yeah, recommend it. Nice escape from the city.
So this is a public bath. It cost 60 Taiwanese dollars to get in, but you do need a proper swim costume. So Joe, this is a pretty good map of the whole area.
It's a great map. So we've got the main train to Beitou Station.
Right, yeah.
And then there's a tiny little train that goes...
The coloured train.
In a little loop.
Yeah.
One stop and very slowly to here.
Right.
So you don't have to walk.
Right.
And then we just came straight out.
Yep.
Followed it up through the gardens.
Yep. We saw the museum.
Yes, Orange Ridge.
The Thermal Valley. Yeah.
Yeah, so here's the museum.
Yeah, it's all nicely contained within about 1 kilometre, isn't it?
Yeah, nice, easy walkable, nice stroll.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. We continued walking down the hill and towards the train station. We passed the Hot Spring Museum and the public library. I decided to have a peek inside. And I've got to say, the architecture inside was just as stunningly beautiful as the architecture on the outside of the building. What a great public space for the residents to enjoy. We kept on walking to the station and caught the metro train back to the city. At this point, we decided to split up. I wanted to see a couple of temples and Joe wanted to go see a couple of art and craft shops and perhaps a stationery shop or two. It took 2 trains and a 45-metre journey on the MRT system, as well as a 10-minute walk at the end to reach the temples. There's basically 2 very large temple complexes right next to each other. The first is the Taipei Confucius Temple. That's the first one I visited. There's free entry to the Confucius Temple and the gardens are quite extensive and formal. The temple is surrounded by inner and outer walls and gates, and it's quite spectacular. I was actually astonished at how few people were actually visiting this temple. The other thing I was astonished about was that the temple was right underneath the flight path of one of Taipei's main airports. It did spoil the peace and tranquility of the place at regular intervals. The Taipei Confucius Center was built in 1879. It was demolished during the Japanese occupation and rebuilt in 1930. The temple honors Confucius, one of the greatest philosophers and teachers of all time. Confucius valued simplicity, and that's one of the reasons that you won't find any deities or icons of him, nor will there be any images or inscriptions on the walls, windows, or columns. And I think it's the simplicity of the building and architecture that make this place such a delight to visit. I really enjoyed my visit to the temple, and the overcast skies made the whole thing broody and melodramatic. Just across the road from the Confucius Temple was the Dalongdong Baoan Temple complex. The original temple was made of wood and dated to 1742. In 1804, a number of prominent and wealthy families financed the reconstruction of the temple, and construction began in 1805 and finished in 1830. Over the decades, there's been numerous additions and renovations to the temple. The main hall is located at the centre of the temple complex. It serves a number of different deities, including the Beitou Emperor and the Gong Emperor. Different deities that are rich in the history and culture of the Taiwanese people. Every square inch of the temple complex was covered in murals, carvings on the columns, statues. It was just a delightful display of fantastic art and workmanship. I'd highly recommend you visiting here. I finished up at this temple complex, walked back to the train station and caught the train back to the hotel where I met up with Joe. We both had a rest and a freshen up and headed out to dinner that evening. We decided to go to Kura Sushi restaurant, which is only a few hundred meters from our hotel. This video is already quite long, so I'll do a separate food review of our food experiences in Taiwan in a separate video that I'll release shortly. If you can't wait for that video to come out, I will summarise our experiences being a hell of a lot of fun, but the food quality wasn't quite as good as some of the fresh and delicious food and sushi food that we got in Japan on our last visit. And what better way to end another perfect day of touring around Taiwan and Taipei with good food and a couple of ice-cold beers. I do hope you've liked this video. If so, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Hit that notify bell so you'll never miss another upcoming video. If you'd like to support my channel, please consider buying me a coffee or hit that super thanks button. And until my next video from Taipei, you take care and bye now.